Who we are is a way to signify a concern that I have with the relationship between the collective and the individual and the collective. So it's a statement, there's a declarative aspect to it, who we are, but I think it can also be understood as a question, because who is the we? What is the R? So what is being described, what is being fleshed out or presented? And I think this is a sort of underlying question in the work, is this tension between notions of representation in relationship to abstraction. So if the individual is that which is abstract and the collective is that which is representative, is, I think, an interesting dynamic to explore. Who we are also speaks to notions of change and how things change in relationship to our present moment, our past, and our future. So it's located in the present, who we are, but of course it's informed by who we were and who we would like to be. So there's also a kind of playfulness and a lightness to it, but it also suggests the stakes involved, I think, when we think about how people are represented politically, for example, or how people within the space of my work are represented conceptually, how an individual can be conceptualized, and how that has a profound impact on the lives that we lead, how we live, who we are, how we are, is also perhaps a question I think the exhibition puts forth. How are we? I think of the work as a kind of an archival resource and as an archive as well. So it's a resource and an archival resource. Those maybe are subtle differences, but they mean something in the sense that an archive has some sort of use to it. So that's how it's a resource for me as an artist. So I will actually use a very limited amount of, let's say, text or images in the work at any given time, but over time they accumulate, so it keeps building. And these are pulled from my personal library of books, which is a perpetually expanding collection. And it's kind of a way for me to read my library in a visual sense, and also as a means of me to present my work as a kind of a library, something that is not so much to be decoded, but something that requires close engagement and attention. It's a way to kind of slow things down, and that's something that always interests me about, let's say film or painting or music, is how from a cultural standpoint we end up spending so much time with these different kinds of materials. We listen to the same songs for hundreds of years, or look at the same paintings for 200 years, or why do we have that kind of drive? What does that say about our humanity, that these things speak to us? And so I think in a limited sense, that's one of the things that the work contends with. Why does this image resonate? Kind of the poetics. And if you look at sort of something one way, but then you look at it another, and these subtle shifts, I think, change how we think about our position in relationship to history, but also in relationship to how we shape our sense of self. That it's a kind of archival process, that we are archived. Some of the work in the exhibition I've been working on for over a decade now, like the Black Dada paintings and also the system of display, but they have changed slowly over time. And the Black Dada paintings have changed in that they've become more reductive or minimal in a sense. They, while utilizing the same basic elements, cropped, enlarged images of solids in complete open cubes from the 1970s, and letters from the phrase Black Dada, and putting those two things in relationship to each other. That's the face of it. But then I think the actual experience of it is very different. I think they appear to be black, monochromatic paintings, but I like to think of them as a kind of a stage for the work, a surface where things can play out, where different narratives can take shape and evolve. And it's looking into something that resists being easily understood. So these elements are there, but they want to be something else. They want to be more than what they are. It's not just a fragment. It's not just a letter. It's not just a black painting. It's a kind of philosophy of being. I like to think about working in different modes and registers more than mediums. And painting is a mode of representation, whereas a moving image is a mode of representation. And within the space of my work, they inform each other. And sometimes you're going after a sound, and sometimes you're going after an image. And you might think the sound would be in the moving image work, and the image is in the painting, but maybe it's the other way around. The sound is in the painting, and the image is in the moving image.
My mother's name is Pauline Houston Jones. My name is Charles Houston Jones. I had this theory that everyone should change their names every 21 years. So I was 21, so I changed my name from Charles to Ishmael. Ishmael was one of my favorite characters in the Bible because he's sort of a troublemaker. He's a bastard child, and his name means God will hear, Ishmael. My father's name was North Jones. He was from Belzoni, Mississippi. My mother, Pauline Houston, was from Collinsville, Mississippi in the north. And Dad was from the Delta, Mom was from the Red Hills. My father died when he was 67 years, 6 months, and 1 day. Both my parents died in July, and I was an only child, so it was sort of, we were like this three-person unit.
I actually begin the video works much like I begin all of my work, and this is by writing a kind of a script. It's interesting to think about the Black Dada text, which is often referred to as the Black Dada Manifesto, but I prefer to call it a text, as a kind of a script, as a kind of a script for the visual work. And I begin the video portraits in the same way, by writing a script that may or may not be utilized when I'm shooting the actual piece. In the Rayner portrait, she does end up reading the script that I prepared. The Rayner script become central to the piece. And the Ishmael Houston Jones piece, it became central to the conditions that the piece was made in or within, in the sense that it framed the exchange that I had with Ishmael. So he read it, but it wasn't actually included so much in the actual piece. It was a point of departure.
Can I have the
I like playing with that question of, is this a documentary or is this kind of a performance? It's very hard to tell, is there a fact of the matter? What's the fact of the matter? And so I like to think of them as both as scripted and unscripted conversations or exchanges that I'm having with the subjects. I also want people to, again, question theories of representation and how are we actually seeing who Yvonne Rainer is? Are we actually seeing who Ishmael Houston Jones is, or is this a kind of a fiction? Is there ever an opportunity for one to say, this is who I am, or this is who you are, or is that always something that's coming in and out of focus? Then in the paintings, though, I feel like you end up hearing Julius Eastman in very personal terms because the language is actually, I think, personal. And I think it can, in one way, be understood as very provocative, this phrase, crazy nigger. But I actually think it's very personal, and it was a way of him making a very personal statement about who he is, who he might be, how he might be understood from a historical standpoint or a contemporary standpoint, and who he might want to be. I think I'm mostly interested in ideas that are perhaps larger than who we are or who I might be at any given moment. So it's this notion of becoming imperceptible that fascinates me, where you can't perceive who or what I might be in the work or even in relationship to the work. There's this sense of incompleteness as an ethical, necessary condition of being. Black Dada is a question as much as a statement that I contend with on a daily basis when I go into the studio, when I think about what kind of artist I want to be, when I think about what kind of artist I could be, when I think about how history has dealt with artists like me. And so that's interesting to make these statements, like me, want to be, could be, but what do I want to be? And I think Black Dada gives me space conceptually to continue this project of becoming from a visual standpoint when I think about what does Black Dada look like, but also from a theoretical standpoint when I think about the terms that I want to engage, how I want to be in the world. And you can think about artists as archivists, artists as mystic, artists as, I think there's so many kinds of ways that an artist can be and exist in the world. And it's the poetics of it that fascinate me, the poetic potential of art. Not so much what art is, because I think it can be whatever one wants it to be, but what can it do? And Black Dada is a way of saying art can do this, but leaving the this open and undefined, that it rubs up against history, it rubs up against who I am, who you are, whoever that you might be, who we are. And that's just the beginning.